Alrighty, so this video is going to carry over the idea of making these spheres as we've done in previous projects. So a sphere is a great way of just learning a medium and trying to achieve modeling a form through 3 or 4 different values, through a highlight, mid-tones, core, shadow, reflected light, a cast shadow, and the environment behind the object. And these are great because you can just invent them with a simple circle. So now that we're going to be using a different medium, which is Conte Crayon, and I've broken up my pack and broken into little pieces, which is expected. And I know you don't have white charcoal included in your portrait set, but you can use white charcoal that you have on top of the Conte Crayon. So it's kind of a similar medium. It can be used here. I don't want you to use white charcoal yet, but I'll explain what my thinking later, but you can incorporate this in. You can also incorporate the white charcoal pencil, and you can use blending stubs. Now, if you look at this right here, this is a demonstration I did recently, and this is white charcoal and compressed charcoal. And look at the kind of mixture that you can create by blending the two mediums in together. Whereas before we were just using compressed charcoal and using the white of the paper to create the light, midtones, and reflected light. Now we're going to start to mix more. So this is kind of the first step to mixing. So this is definitely something you want to do just to practice. And then this is the first example you're going to do, and that's a separate video. And then after that, then you're going to take 3 of these circles. You're going to put ellipses underneath, same as we've been doing. Okay. And in this case, I'm just going to plop this over here. If you look at these 3, ignore these for a second, but if you look at these 3, I'm slowly integrating or combining or adding more color. So more of a warm and a cool approach. So this is the kind of the first base, and it's just using 2 colors. This is using 4 colors, and this is using 6 colors. And you kind of see that they're starting to get more and more saturated with hue, and because of the warm and cool approach. So that's kind of how we're going to go about this. And if you think about this, your self-portrait's going to incorporate a lot of these colors here. This is still more of a value study. There's a little bit of hue here, and this is a little bit of in between the two, and this is kind of more accurate what you're going to be doing. In addition to that, if you just look at this here, this is just using blue and this kind of tan color here. And I was just curious, I was wondering if I could create this spherical form using this. And it's true, you can. And you can use any of these and create this kind of a light, dark mixture to create this volume modeling the form. But what we're going to do here is these 3, 1, 2, 3, to prepare you for the self-portrait, prepare you for skin tones. So I'm just going to put this on the side here. All right, so you're going to just trace a glass, something you can fit on a half-ripped sheet of paper. Trace, trace, trace. Just give yourself a little room on this side for the shadow. And then after that, you're going to grab this guy and we're going to do this one first. Right here. And what that is using the dark brown, which is this color. I just broke a piece off, and that's what I want you to do. I want you to break a piece off and use the side. All right. So I've filled, and because you're using your general drawing paper that's useful for any medium, it's not the best for this medium because it doesn't allow, there's not a tooth to it, so it doesn't allow this to saturate inside of the paper. Not saturated in, but the tooth kind of act as little quarries for the medium to hang out. So this doesn't have it. So it saturates a lot faster. So you can kind of see how this is much more dry. There isn't any wax in this like there is with compressed charcoal. So it's kind of, it's very vulnerable. It's easy to smear, and it's also easy to lose what you've done. And a lot of this stuff kind of hangs out on the surface. So that's okay, just get used to it. When you use a different sheet of paper, it's fine. But the nice thing about this is you can apply mark making too. You can kind of draw on top. You can have a little mark making going on, so you can incorporate line and values. Okay, so I got this in there. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to get my brown, do this, and I just made my core shadow, which is like a lima bean look, and then I'm going to put my cast shadow in right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go around the circle. With the brown. And I'll talk about color more here in terms of warm and cool. Right now, this is basically just, think of this as your cool, but this is still just a value study. It's not different than doing the black and the white. It's just a little bit of hue. And then after that, you can just start to smear this in with your fingers. And you're trying to achieve a highlight, midtones, dark, and then reflected light. So it's easy to like lose the edges here because it's not like the compressed charcoal. So what I'm doing is I'm just smearing around, and I'm going to add a little charcoal here. So basically everything's going to get a little bit of this and a little bit of that, except different quantities. There's going to be like 10% of this, 9% of that, and vice versa. Just a little bit here. Even in the shadow, there's a little bit, but then I can go on top. So again, it's going to layer and layer until you get it the way you want it. Just save a little room because you're going to work with that as well. And notice one thing here. I'm actually, you just blow the stuff off, and sometimes I'll walk outside and if I'm at the kitchen table. Notice I'm pulling this back into the edge of the circle without trying to lose the circle. And then what I can do is establish my highlight again. So now I'm using the edge. I'm just trying to get some charcoal there. And then I can kind of go around and try to reestablish that edge. And make this and don't use white here, just make this your lightest value. And now I'm going to try to blend it into so you can see the transition from light to mid-tone to dark. And I think I'm going to do the same on this side. I'm just going to try to blend this in up a little bit, just so I get that mid-tone, because this reflected light shouldn't be as bright as that. And once I get my values established, I'm really going to start to focus on the edges. I'm going to put a little of this in there just so I have something to mix it in, and then I can kind of go on top and really think about my edges now. And when you put the shadow in, notice the shadow's huge now. what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to go around it and basically redraw the shadow, but then I'm going to pull it down, pull it up. And you can kind of see it starting to form now. So you just have to play around with it for a while and move charcoal around. You can even use this, but I do have some black charcoal here, so it's probably going to mix in a little bit, but you can use this for the edge if you want. Prefer using the pencil, or your finger if you can. So that's good enough for the moment. You can kind of see the difference between here and here. I think I pulled this down a little bit more, so maybe I'll try that. So I'm just adding more charcoal, and then I'm just kind of using that stuff, and I'm trying to pull it down so there's more of a mixture happening. And again, you're mixing two mediums together to create, to model the form. All right. Next, we're going to jump here, and I'm just going to try to perfect this a little bit. And then I'll show you how you start with the same approach, and then you're going to incorporate a couple more colors. So I'll do that next. All right, so the next one that you're going to do here, before I go there, I believe this sphere is a little better than that sphere. I could work on this a little bit more, but with the interest of time, I'm going to continue on. So the next one you're going to approach the same way. You're going to give it the same base. So you're basically going to draw the same thing. Not in as much detail because you're going to add more to it, but I'll explain. So you start off with the base, which is this value here. It's going to kind of just fill in some of it around there, and I'm going to grab this guy and put it in the core. Put the shadow in. Put a little of this in to mix it up, just to get a little bit of a mixture between everything. It's actually kind of nice. I'm mixing with the medium itself right now a little bit. Get the backdrop in. La, 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 la. Put this in here a little bit more. And then you want to smear it around. It is easy to lose the sphere itself. So you have to make sure when you're smearing it to not lose it that much. There's just, look at all this dust of charcoal. So again, this is a little bit different. The nice thing about this is, I mean, I wouldn't do it yet, but you can spray this and actually work on top of the spray. But for now, I have nowhere to. All right, so now I'm just gonna try to clarify the edge. Run a medium here. I gotta save this for the self-portrait. And again, don't use all your medium up because it is kind of soft. I'll just use this here. Okay, so now I have my base, right? So I kind of made the same thing there. It's a little different, but it's similar. Similar enough. Let's put a little down here. Draw my, there you go. All right, so the next thing you're gonna do is you only have one cool color in this pack, meaning, I mean, this is probably the next coolest because it's more neutral, and that's that kind of grayish dark brown. But the only cool color you have is this blue. So you're going to use this quite often. And you can kind of see that I've been using blue in some of these examples here. But blue, think of in shadow. Blue is also a darker value. But whenever you mix blue and say anything warm, because these are all basically oranges, all different variations of orange, yellow orange, violet orange, red, but they're all within the orange family. And when you mix blue with orange, they're complementary hues, so they're going to gray each other out. So when I mix this here, even though this is kind of a desaturated orange, it's brown, which is desaturated orange. I'm going to put a blue here, and it's going to gray out too. But you're going to use blue in the areas that are in shadow. So blue here, blue here. Now it's up to you whether you want to put blue back here. I don't know if I did that in my other drawing. I think I did a little bit. You can, just to kind of give it a little bit of hue, a little bit of color. Just a little bit of blue, why not? It kind of grayed things out a little bit and just kind of blending it. And then you're going to start to use, I'm going to jump up to this. I would say you could jump to this guy, but you really can't see it being used that much. There's a little bit, actually it's not so bad. Oh, that was the one that I said jump up to here, but then you want to stop, just jump up one more step. So I'm going to go with this one here. It's kind of like the, this is what we've been using. I'm sorry, this is what we've been using here. And this has a little bit more hue to it in terms of when we're on the red side. So adds a little more color, a little bit more warmth. Even though it's generally warm. So I'm going to put this here, I'm going to put this here. And I'll reserve, because I feel like this is just a little bit lighter in value. So I'm going to reserve that for the lightest part, which is going to be the highlight here in the center. And then I'm just going to try to blend these two together. And then I'm going to blend it into the blue. And you can kind of see, little by little, it's becoming more color. And I don't have, I'm just going to put a little of this down here too. Because there's reflected light, right? And if you put too much of one value or one color, then you just add a little bit of the other stuff. You just keep going back and forth. Because remember, this is really dry, so it just moves across the surface. And it's hard to there you go. Now you don't have to smear everything. It's just I'm just doing that to get the charcoal into the teeth. But I also like to have some line as part of this. I think it's kind of fun. All right, so I'm just gonna try to get my highlight here. Get a little bit more of this pinkish hue. Where's my blue? Get a little more blue here. And remember, it should just be just a little bit more colorful than what we have here. A little bit more color. I'm just gonna blend it in a little bit more. Maybe that's too blue. I'm gonna bring in some of my brown back in. And just kind of do a combination of them both. And you kind of see how they're starting to blend in together now. And then I got my reflected light. I'm trying to make sure my reflected light isn't too light. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull it down into, I'm pulling the reflected light down, or I'm pulling this, actually the cast shadow down here in this direction. And then what I can do is I can just reestablish that edge here. And then you kind of have it. So I'm using both blue and the brown to kind of reestablish that edge. I'm going to smear it in, but then I'm also going to use this as my to define that shape. I'm going to blend a little bit up here, just so the shadow can, it's darker than this, but lighter than that. And then at the very end, you can just, I'm just going to blend this in. And at the very end, you can start to establish the edges again. I'm just going to try to clear the edges up. It takes a while to like really get this medium down, but once you do, it's kind of fun. So you can kind of see, now that I put that in, some of the mark making that exists there kind of has a playfulness to it. Allow that to happen. It doesn't be perfect and everything's so blended and beautiful and all that stuff. It should be a combination of blending and mark making. And you can, as you can see, I just put a mark there. I like that mark, so just let it stay. Don't feel like you have to treat everything the same. I'm just going to blend this out so it kind of fades out. So I'm happy with this. This is fine. I'm just going to blend this in a little bit more down here. So there's a softer transition between this and that. I can move some of this up. All right, that's fine. Oops. So it gets a little bit more colorful, a little bit more, I'm sorry, a little less colorful, a little bit more colorful in terms of hues, more present. And then the last one, we're going to do the same exact, we're going to bring it up to there, and then we're going to add more. But in this case, we're going to add maybe a deeper orange, and can't really do anything else other than the blue and the brown, but we can add more of these hues. Would you want to use these guys? Not yet. I think it's a little bit too extreme unless you're trying to make like a red ball exist, and then you have this deep blue shadow, which could be cool. That would be a whole other kind of project. But I'm trying to have you think about skin tones. And if you have a dark complexion or a light complexion, it's all the same. It's just there's light values, there's midtones, and there's dark values. And all these tones here exist. It's just there's going to be a more quantity of one than the other. That's it. It's all the same colors though. So I will make another video about that one in a second. All right, so I quickly made another version of that. It's a little different, but it's similar. And now I can start to introduce more hue. So again, we're already using this big blue guy. I'm not going to use those red ones yet, but they're good for when you get into self-portrait. They're good for like the red in the eyes. They're actually, this is good for the sides of the cheek. And some areas you'll be surprised on how much you'll use them. But I'm just going to use some of these oranges here because it's kind of where this is going. So right now I'm going to add more, and this is basically what I'm getting towards right here. You can kind of see it's becoming more color here. So I'm just going to add some orange here. The nice thing about orange, it's a bit of a darker value than what I was using before, which was this, and that can remain as my lightest value in the center. And I can even use this orange here. Just kind of see what happens. And I'm just going to blend these guys up. Let them mix into one another a little bit. And you'll see when you mix the orange with the blue down here, it's really going to start to gray up. It should gray up. There we go. So you can kind of see it's starting to get a little bit more color. The blue's becoming a little more prevalent here. Just gonna see what happens when I put the orange back here. I'm just gonna use you'll find when you're doing the self-portrait, you're gonna use all of these, just in different quantities, no matter what your skin complexion is. I'm noticing that some of the lighter ones are a little softer. Then this one's not as soft of a medium. If you ever go out on a snowy day and look at a certain time of day, a sunny, snowy day, not when it's snowing, but when it's sunny, and if you look at the reflection, not the reflection, but the shadows of the trees on the snow, they're really blue. And if you look at the snow itself, it's kind of orange. Not this bright orange, not this dark blue, but that does exist. And if you start to look, if you start to notice that now, you'll see how this kind of complementary hue relationship works in reality. Oops. So basically I'm where I want to be at the moment. I'm just making these 3 spheres, trying to model them using multiple colors, your warm and your cool, and think about skin tones and whatnot. And not that this is everyone's skin tone. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of variety, but just as a starting point from adding more hue each time, and to get that sense of volume and hue and transition of value. I'm just going to put a little bit more. This is definitely an effective exercise. I'm just going to take this and blend it out a little bit more. Did I lose some of my orange? And one last thing I just want to mention, and I did mention this before, but again, if everything looks too blurry or treated similarly in terms of, put some mark making back in that drawing. Just by me doing this and outlining this form, just kind of gives it a little energy. Don't make it a default mechanism, meaning like, oh, I need to jazz this up, so I'm going to put some jazzy marks in. No, that's not what I mean. I just saying, like, try to have some variety in terms of how you treat the medium and the material. All right, that's basically it. You're just going to kind of transition from bump, bump, bump. So it looks like a gradual shift from little color to more color. And if you look at this one, it's a little bit different. I think I have a bit of my core is a little better here. It's not as good here. So if I were to work on this a little bit more, I'd probably put more orange here. Did I say core? I meant reflected light. It feels better. And when you do this, you got to make some other adjustments. I just got to clarify down here again. And then I think I'm just gonna take some of the brown, just get a darker value there. You gotta just keep adding and working it, until you get it to where you want it. All right, I could do this all day. That's not so bad. That's getting better. Alrighty, see you later. You can also spray fixative on these, because this is something that, hold on a second, let me just focus. Okay. So this is something that it's such a dry medium that it just rests on the surface. And what fixative does, it adheres it to the surface, but you can work on top of this because you're not erasing, you're not using an eraser, it's not a big deal, you just continue to build and build and build. So it's almost like you put a layer down and you can add more to it. So if you feel you've reached your saturation point with the medium, what it does though, if you zoom in real closely, it does start to pixelate a little bit some of the, or make it appear grainy, but you can still work with it. It does still come off. I mean, it's not like adhered on there perfectly, but the idea is there.
Okay.